Hello, welcome back to the True Crime Guys podcast. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Michael.
How is everybody? It's Friday the 13th.
Ooh, spooky.
Last time we did an episode on Friday the 13th, we forgot to mention, and afterwards we were kicking ourselves like, how do we not bring that up?
I know. It's not like we have a bunch of other things on our mind and trying to get all our facts straight and worried about a case.
Yeah, that's true. A lot on our plate, guys. No, and really not. Like, now that MICHEAL Cate is doing these awesome crime lines, I'm just living my life.
Now
I finished The Office this week.
Yeah.
Like, I study, and I enjoy studying, and I'm not sitting here just grinding, staring at screens.
Right.
I mention this every fucking week. I'm not going to keep doing it.
And we have brain space to remember things like cool dates.
Yes.
Like Friday the 13th.
Exactly.
Right.
And the fact that we took last week off. Deal with it.
Yeah. We actually put out 4 episodes last month, so.
Yeah, and we just did Jody Arias on Patreon. So if you're not a patron, go. What are you doing? Jump on it.
That was a fun one. That was a lot of fun.
I actually joined Patreon this week just to see how the process goes of joining.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, because I mean, everybody's like, sometimes we'll get questions like, "How do I get the feed on iTunes with the premium episodes?" And I'm like, I've never done it. I think you do this. So I did it so I could see, and yeah, it's pretty easy.
How is it?
It's pretty damn easy. It's very user friendly to join Patreon and to get the feed. I've got the gold. You want to see it? I've got the gold feed.
Yeah, let's see. Who are you a patron of?
Us.
Oh, you put money in your own pocket? What are you, fucking Jay-Z?
Yeah, I get the $2 right back. That's the beauty of it.
Buy your own wine.
Yeah, I'm sipping my own shit here, man. I'm smoking my own product.
All right.
I was actually re-listening to the West Memphis 3 episode that we did, and it was actually really good.
Was it?
Yeah.
I'm always impressed when I listen back, and I'm like, this is actually pretty good.
I thought those guys were pretty good.
Yeah. You ready to start this thing?
Yeah. It's
this is
rainy week in Vegas, kind of overcast, beautiful, and it's Friday the 13th, and we're ready to record another British episode, bitches.
Oh, yes.
Get ready for some awful fucking accents, mates. You bunch of fucking wankers. With your fucking tea. Have your tea in your garden, you bitches. Let's do this.
How's everyone doing tonight? We're John, Reginald and the Wankers, and this is our song, CantDoIt Christie. Thank you.
It started when I was younger. Poor, pitiful me. I had a thirst for power, but Mama doted on me, and she turned me into Can't Do It Christie. Can't do it for me. Can't do it Christie. Pleasure's never free. It got worse, I got older. Kids always picking on me. I really thought I could trust her, but she told everybody to call me Can't Do It Christie. Can't do it for me. Can't do it Christie. Pleasure's never free. Breathing nice and deep, boy. It'll do you some good. That's what they used to tell me when I never could. They say, Can't do it, Christie. Can't do it for me. Can't do it, Christie. Pleasure's never free. Come again now. Can't do it, Christie. Can't do it for me. Can't do it, Christie. Pleasure's never free.
The 6th commandment, thou shalt not kill, fascinated me. I always knew that someday I should defy it. John Reginald Halliday Christie.
Started when I was younger. Poor, pitiful me.
All right. Our case this week is back in England, and it's wartime, World War II time.
a very influential serial killer for England.
Was it?
Yeah, he brought upon a lot of change with the death penalty and stuff.
Oh, you're
with
right.
His whole case.
You're right, and for good reason.
Yeah.
There's a crazy situation in this one in which we have not had before. One where the killer killed in a different type of way that, is less direct, but still just as effective.
Yeah.
He still killed the guy,
I mean,
but he didn't do it with his hands or anything like that.
Right.
He did it through the court system.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that is the first one. I mean, we've had people be wrongly accused in other cases, but we haven't had people actually go all the way.
Yeah, well, back then it was like, you get the death penalty, man.
England didn't fuck around, did they?
Before the month's over, you're dead, man.
They're not even waiting for the jury to finish voting.
Right?
Like,
you're not making it into the next season of Game of Thrones. It's
well,
over.
That's the majority. Get the rope.
Right? Seriously.
Damn, what are y'all, Texas?
Literally, as the verdict's being read, like they're putting the rope over your neck.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Like, here we go. It's like
the floor drops out from where you're sitting. Not that extreme, but I mean, it was a pretty quick system that they had.
Yeah.
So yeah, this case had some interesting stuff that had happened, and it was just a brutal killer.
And it was during the smog too, man.
Yeah, you were telling me about this, and I did the book that we.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the sources we used, since we don't always mention it. When sometimes we screw up and forget to bring that up, and I actually had to send a list to somebody for the private Facebook group of episodes that we didn't mention, the sources we used, the books we read and stuff. So yeah, shout out to that person.
Oh, good looking out.
Sorry, I forgot your name. We read the book John Christie, The True Story of the Rillington Place Strangler by Jack Rosewood and Rebecca Lowe.
Yeah.
Jack Rosewood.
It's very straightforward.
Great author for us as far as like studying cases, because all of his true crime books they just tell you what you need to know. There's not a lot of
really it's for studying.
It's I mean,
you can get through it twice and you got the whole idea of the story.
If you just want to know about serial killers, his books are fantastic. But if you want a little bit more, it's not the most descriptive books. It's not going to tell you the feel of the town at the time and all that stuff. It's just going to tell you what he did,
and
how he was caught, and all that.
Yeah, and he's not trying to like accentuate anything either. He's just like
getting to the fucking meat of the
he's
story.
Like, this is what I know for sure. This may have happened. This may not have happened, but this is what I know for sure.
He does throw in some opinions.
Yeah, he throws in that every now and then. He's like, possibly this, possibly that.
But like we've talked about many times, there's no like fake conversations. There's no like, you don't get as like involved.
Right. If it's speculation, he identifies it as speculation.
True. Which is good in its own way.
It is. But I also listened to a somewhat contradictory author talk about her book. I didn't want to read another book because, that's 2 books, bro.
Right. Johnny 2 books over here.
Johnny 2 books. But author Cate Winkler Dawson, she wrote a book called Death in the Air, The True Story of a Serial Killer, The Great London Smog, and the Strangling of a City.
Oh.
It's a little lengthy.
Nice. Nice wordplay, too.
But great wordplay, right? With the way that John...
Strangling of a City.
Yeah. It's like you had John in the action and the smog at the same time.
Yeah.
Thousands of people died from this, dude. And a state of emergency was never declared.
Wow.
And during this whole smog thing, they also... this is such a... I don't know. It's definitely not a coincidence. It's almost like they were like, it's already bad. Let's introduce these new fucking double-decker buses.
Yeah, you were talking about how there used to be an electric tram.
There used to be an electric tram. They got rid of it for whatever reason. I can't understand that. And then, unless somebody was invested in, fuels or whatnot.
Yeah, it seems to always be the case,
that
right?
Sounds like
money.
Probable.
Big wigs and money there.
Yeah.
They make shit happen.
But the buses are cool, right? The buses are iconic.
Yes.
But I think they're that way because maybe the government pushed them. I don't know. If you're like from England, like let us know if you were... I mean, I don't know. Man,
if you were around in the 30s.
Around in the... No, this is like 50. Like, I think it was in the early 50s.
Oh, okay.
Late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah, he was doing this killing around then.
Yeah, so if you were around, or... Dude, they could have gotten stories from their grandparents.
I mean, if you know the history of England,
parents.
that's all we're really talking about. You don't have to have lived it. You just know the history of where you live.
Let us know if was there like a lot of propaganda as far as these buses were concerned? Was this supposed to like change the city? It's just so interesting to me that they were the most over-industrialized city at the time, and then they're bringing in these giant diesel gas-guzzling buses, but they paint them bright red and like...
But I feel like you had to be over-industrialized to keep up, because back then everything was about war. It was, you're talking if you're talking the 50s, you're talking about they just went through World War I and World War II.
Yeah.
Everything was about survival, and that meant keeping up. That meant keeping up with Germany. You had to produce, and you're on this island, which is You know, so you got
saying,
to make more planes, more boats, and it's just industrialized.
I just don't understand why you're going to make it worse when you don't have to. Is what I'm getting at.
Right. Keep the electric tram going.
Yeah, the tram.
Yeah, you got me on that. I don't know. Okay. I don't know. I didn't read the same thing you read though. That's pretty interesting take. Is that there was this real bad fog going on during the time of this case that we're talking about. Which is basically why we even brought it up.
Right.
So it's strangling the city, and John Christie, the subject of our case this week, was strangling women.
He was.
And babies.
Yeah. Maybe.
A baby. Maybe baby.
Maybe.
You don't think he did it?
What's his motive, though?
We'll get into it.
All right.
So John Reginald Halliday Christie, known as Reg Christie to his friends and family.
I think it's Reg.
Or CantDoIt Christie, as we'll get to.
CantDoIt Christie.
Was born April 8th, 1899. This is an older case. We're talking,
Yeah.
We're gonna go
sounds
through his life,
really old, but you know what? When we're like 50 and we're telling people we were born in the 1900s.
We did a podcast back in 2017.
Back in the 20th century when I was born.
Right. He shares a birthday with Robin Wright, most famously from Princess Bride, Patricia Arquette, Dean Norris, Hank. Dude, I love that actor. You know, Hank from Breaking Bad, one of the great actors.
Yeah.
Dude, that was one of the great characters in any show ever.
Yeah.
That poor bastard. God, what his brother-in-law put him through.
That just goes to show you can do everything right and still get
really
fucked
did.
over.
I mean, he was kind of a dick to Walter, to be fair, though.
What, at the end?
No, in the beginning. Like, in the first season, you go back, you're like,
I feel like that's a normal...
He was an alpha douche to his brother-in-law. He always tried to belittle him and stuff, and that's part of why...
But I think
Walter really gave it to him later.
But he still always respected Walt, though.
He did.
And it was kind of it was just their thing, dude.
You're not as badass as me, but you're a good guy.
But you're smart as fuck, girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was smart.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. Torrin Smith, the youngest kid in Home Improvement. I didn't know that was his name. The young brother in Home Improvement.
I did not.
And Chris Kyle. Oh, that's an interesting person right
American
there.
Sniper.
There's a lot of controversy with Chris Kyle.
Right.
That's an interesting figure in history right there.
When's his birthday?
A lot April of people have opinions on that guy. I would have to read the book and watch the movie American Sniper to really give my opinions, but I know there's a lot of controversy with him.
Oh yeah, there is.
And he had a tragic death too.
Right.
So let's talk about his upbringing. John Christie was born in Northram. Maybe if you say it in British, Northram, England.
Oh, I bet that OW
Halifax.
in the middle, they don't even say it.
Northram. Okay.
I bet.
We're probably wrong, but we're going to roll with it because no British person's here to tell us we're wrong.
Suck it.
Near Halifax. He grew up with 6 sisters and no brothers. So imagine that. if anybody out there can identify with that, I feel for you. That's rough.
I've heard different accounts though. So I've heard like the author I was telling you, Cate Winkler, Dawson. She said that he only had 4.
Yeah, no, I've heard seven total children, and then I've heard 5.
Yeah. That's
so,
weird,
but
right?
either way, if you have 4 sisters or 6 sisters, that's 6 is extremely brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, man, you're gonna be, and I think he was the youngest child too, right?
Yeah, he was.
So, man, imagine you have 6 older sisters.
Right, and
Holy
with
crap.
the father who's a strict disciplinarian, and then the mother is like really doting, of course, because it's their only boy,
This is
right?
the classic serial killer upbringing where you have you're being kind of belittled and constantly taken care of by your sisters, and there's this weird. Supposedly, he had this weird sexual tension with them because they would turn him on, and then they would belittle him.
Isn't that weird?
It is weird.
I don't know about all.
To think. I've never had a sister, so I don't know if my sister could ever turn me on. I would hope not. I would hope not.
You don't have a cousin you were close to? Nothing like that? You can relate?
No.
No.
But yeah, his mother completely doted on him because he was her only son and her baby. And the father was, like you said, a strict disciplinarian. Everything, he was deadly serious all the time, and everything was his way.
Yeah.
And, no talking back and all that stuff. And it was a different time, so I think a lot of fathers were like that.
Yeah, I think it was the typical Victorian upbringing of the time. I really do.
Yeah.
I don't think it was out of the ordinary. I don't think this upbringing groomed a serial killer.
Well, it's a classic, though, as far as the mother being overly protective and the father being a strict disciplinarian. Almost every time.
Or was she like every mother with the youngest child? It's like they're your youngest one, especially if you know you're not going to have any more. It's like you want to make the most of it. So you want to, I don't know. I just feel like I don't think she was I don't think you can blame his mother in any way for this.
Well, you can have that, and then you can have wasn't like Ed Kemper's. We never did him, so I don't know the case that well, but I feel like his mother was really domineering, right? Like a real domineering mother.
Yeah, but she was abusive,
verbally and domineering and all that. So you can have that too, and then they grow to hate women for that reason. So little boys can go wrong in a lot of ways, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're blaming the mothers here.
Yeah. Well, as a child, John had red hair and blue eyes, and his sisters reportedly found him very pretty and would dress him up in girls' clothes. Like, that's pretty normal.
Yeah, I think so.
He had low self-esteem and kept to himself and was even called queer and often ridiculed. I believe his father would do that, right? Would belittle him and like emasculate him, and his sisters were doing the same thing.
Yeah, this guy's he's around women all the time. I mean, of course he's going to pick up on some of their habits and their interest and things like that, because that's always exposed to. Like that's really unfair. And the father's point, especially with him being a distant father like he was. I'm not talking about like distant, like not with the family, like he was there, but there's a way where you can never leave your family but be absent. Well, you know what I'm saying? You're not engaging in your kids' lives. You're not encouraging them in any way. He's not showing him any kind of father-son affection or any kind of time like that. If you don't teach him how to be a man, then how is he gonna?
Well, I feel like it was just a different time, and like fathers, we always hear about like in the past, fathers were always like kind of like cold to their boys and like expected them to be men right away, and it's probably because a lot of times their fathers had gone through war and they were just like, it's a cold world and I need to make this kid hard right away, like that type of thing.
And also, a lot of these fathers, these World War I vets and things like that, like they weren't getting great jobs outside either. So that they're working a lot. They're putting in a lot of time just to support these families. And a lot of them had large families because they also had, they had farms.
So that's a big part of this case is the fact that England at the time, they didn't have any forms of contraception available.
Right.
So like that's why it seemed like everybody had large families.
And abortions were illegal.
I just didn't hear about pulling out.
No, right. That's a stupid idea. It'd be ridiculous.
Yeah, but it's like, because John in the future would have issues sexually, and they would kind of like talk about that leading to a lot of his anger, which we'll get to.
Right.
Despite all of his troubles at home, John was an excellent student and had an IQ reportedly of around 128.
That's a pretty consistent fact that I found.
That he was very smart.
It seems, the 128. Like I didn't find a whole lot of wavering information as far as
how does everybody know their IQs? Like,
I don't know.
How do we know this just random British dude's IQ as a teenager and the fucking whatever it was?
Well, they probably tested him later on, right?
I guess.
They didn't have much time because he wasn't in prison that long, was he?
Right. And how, like, across the board consistent are these IQ tests? Are they all the same? In every country, are they the same? In every time period, are they the same?
That's a great question. That's a great question.
Because it seems like every damn case we study, that we always know the killer's IQ somehow. We know everybody's IQ. It's like, when did they take this test?
Why did they make that such a thing, too? It's like a way to put them on a pedestal.
I guess it's probably after they're caught. They do it to make sure that they're fit for trial, right? And then that's how it gets out, maybe?
I guess so. But, I mean, you can say sane or insane without giving an IQ test, I think.
Right.
The IQ test just seems like it's something that just helps sell.
Well, that was part of the story. It
helps sell the person. It's like, oh, but they're so intelligent.
Well, that was part of the story with Jodi Arias is they gave her an IQ test leading up to trial to make sure she was fit for trial. And she was talking about how, I'm excited to take this. I want to see how close I am to Einstein. Like, that's how fucking cocky she was.
You're about 40 points away.
Right.
Right, wasn't she?
Yeah.
She was like 116 or something like that.
Yeah, less than John Christie.
Yeah.
So at 11 years old, he won a scholarship to the Halifax Secondary School. He was very good at algebra and math, and he sang in choir as well. And he was a Boy Scout, of course.
Of course.
And was obsessed with wearing his uniform and having that formal look and like he was important.
Yeah.
Which is a very serial killer thing.
He's got a lot of Dennis Rader qualities.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing. Later, when he became the what do you call it? The reserve police officer.
Yes, and he would like stalk women.
Yes, so BTK.
He's very similar to BTK.
He is. He wanted to be taken seriously, man.
Yeah, apparently.
He enjoyed wearing the Boy Scout uniform, and it is said that he could be, because it gave him a sense of power, which he never had at home, being completely outnumbered by women and constantly berated by his father. So he was looking for a way for people to have to listen to him or take him seriously.
Right.
When he was 8, his grandfather passed away, and this is a big moment where in the development of his psyche when it comes to dead people.
Yeah, because I think his grandfather, like his father, was a very domineering character in his life. Mm-hmm. Someone that struck fear in him,
power
someone
from him,
really respected.
Constantly took power from him, which he wanted.
And then when he saw him in the casket, it's like,
yep, the power was gone.
Man, he's not.
Grandfather can't tell me what to do anymore.
Not so tough now, are you?
Look at you. You got something to say?
You got something to say?
That's dark.
Reginald, how dare you?
What? He's all flinching at him.
What are you going to do? Oh, my God.
Yeah, so his parents allowed him to view the body at the wake, and it changed something in him. And he was no longer afraid to be near his grandfather, and he was fascinated by the feeling of being around a body like that. And after this, he started spending time playing in the graveyards.
Yeah.
Did we have killer? We've had a couple killers like this,
We've had a couple
right?
killers that like to visit graveyards.
Yeah.
But he just seemed to like the way that.
How do you feel about graveyards? Do they creep you out?
They do, man. I don't want to spend any more time in there than I got to.
Yeah.
Not because it's like creepy or I believe anything supernatural going on or anything like that. It's just
there's bodies all
I just
below
don't
you.
want a
It's weird.
constant reminder of my mortality. Like,
That's true.
all around me, you know? It's like all these people, you know, we're just walking around enjoying their life.
Yeah.
And this
And
is
now
where
they're
I'm,
gone.
yeah, and this is where, you know, going to end up. Especially when you go see somebody you knew too. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, they're still dead. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, death is not something I like to think about. So let's talk about murder.
Okay.
All right.
So speaking of the graveyards and how his fascination with them, he would go to the graveyard and he would look for broken vaults containing children. Oof. And he would try to look down between the cracks of the broken vaults to see if he could see the body in there. And I doubt he could. I imagine it would be pretty dark in there. Even if you had a crack, like
Right.
the light would have to hit it just right, I imagine. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Dude didn't mind being around dead people, though, as we'll find out. Did not mind it at all. Like,
No,
he
he
didn't
didn't.
mind living with them. Just like they
You know
became
what?
roommates for
I
him.
think he preferred it. Some people say get a few cats. Some people say keep a few bodies in your cabinet.
Yeah.
You know?
So this led to the realization he was not afraid of bodies, and he could find peace around them because they couldn't belittle him, most likely. It was an important turning point for him, and around 15 years old, he would leave school. And at this point, he found out that he was unable to perform sexually on multiple occasions
Yeah.
while in school. So he had his first girlfriend.
Right.
And when things got hot and heavy, nothing happened for him.
Awkward. And then she decided to tell everybody.
Yeah, that's
like
pretty
high
brutal,
school
man.
kids do.
That's pretty brutal.
High school's rough, bro.
So that's how he attained the nicknames of Reggie No Dick and CantDoIt Christie. So we laugh, but that's got to be a pretpretty horrible thing to
rough.
experience.
That's rough.
I feel for you guys out there if you have that issue.
Reginald ED.
Never been my problem, but
Just want to make
I'd
that
say
known.
quite the opposite. It's actually a nuisance. But
Oh my god.
old Reggie No Dick struggled with this ridicule that he received for not being able to get it done in the sack, and this combined with his kind of weird obsession with dead people,
Yeah.
became kind of a deadly cocktail. Like it would grow to manifest itself in the way of murder later on.
This is what created a serial
He
killer.
got this sexual tension built up, and then he also had never got any power or say in anything in his life. He was always belittled.
Yep.
And then this happens too. And I think this probably happened because of this shit behind. I think it's totally mental. Because later when he would get with prostitutes, he was able to perform, right? So it was mental. It was the fact that he was beaten down since he was a child and he never had a say in anything. And that's why he was intimidated by women, and that's why he couldn't get it up.
I think most ED is psychological.
Absolutely.
But yeah, this is the turning point right here. I think if he's able to perform sexually, he doesn't become a serial killer.
Right.
Period. I don't think he does. I think he probably grows up and maybe still wants to boss people around and shit, but I don't think he becomes a serial killer.
Yeah.
I think the sexual tension and that sort of thing that's what created him. That's what did it, I think, with
I think
John
he killed
Christie.
as a necessity for sexual pleasure, right?
Yeah.
Because
He
that's
knew
the
there
only
was no
time he
other
could
way.
perform is if they couldn't like judge him or like, later say anything.
Right.
Or
He's not able to get that release in any other way whatsoever.
that and the fact that he didn't mind being around dead people anyway. So the end result was also something he didn't mind.
Right.
Because he was already kind of fascinated by dead people anyway.
Yeah, apparently
So it served a couple of purposes for him. He was able to get off sexually and then also have the company of dead people for a little while.
yeah, it's a win-win.
Yeah. People would would continue to refer to him by these nicknames into early adulthood. Fucking brutal.
What, early adulthood?
It's like, let it go, man. Let it go. Why you guys
bro.
why you guys so obsessed with my dick?
I would move.
Oh man. He was also known to be a bit odd looking. He had an abnormally large forehead.
Yeah.
Some would say a 5 head.
6 head.
Chrome dome. I don't know.
Megamind.
And he had male pattern baldness combined with the large forehead. So he just,
That's the way it goes. Maybe you should invest in a nice fedora. Something like that, you know?
Yeah, he should have gotten a cool hat, man.
Yeah. Cool hat would have really
rocket, man.
Really pulled it together.
What cards you've been dealt.
There's ways to.
You can play your cards right, or you can just fold, and that's what a lot of people do.
That's what John Christie did. He probably went for the comb over. He combed it forward. He's like, what the fuck?
Because of like the way his upbringing had gone, he craved attention, and he would be known to develop hypochondria, and I think it was kind of made worse and accelerated by his mother allowing it to continue. Like she would give clout to whatever issues he would create in his head.
I thought about that too. Like if he comes to her and is like, "Oh, I'm not feeling good," she probably just bought it right away.
Babied him right away.
Oh, you know. And then he started thinking like, "Well, shit. If mom really believes I'm sick, maybe I am." You know. And then this got worse as he got older.
I think this had been going on since he was real little, and that's part of why his dad would constantly ridicule him too, because he was, always sick or something was going on, and his dad didn't believe it, and his mom wouldn't believe it, and.
Oh, let me guess, you're sick again, you little bitch.
Right. Yeah. You can imagine that type of situation.
Oh, yeah. He's coming home, he's got like coal all over him and shit. He's like inhaling fucking smog and coal all day. Oh, you're sick again, are you?
Let me hear about it. I've been in goddamn mine all night.
Ungrateful little wanker.
John enlisted in. So this may be part of him trying to take the power back and not be called a pussy anymore. When World War I came about, he enlisted as an infantryman and signalman. I'm sure there was a lot of incentives at the time too. I mean, it's not like I don't know if he was trying to be a patriot or like what it was, but I mean, they needed all the help they could get in World War I. Man, millions of lives were lost, millions.
Right.
So I mean, they needed anything they could get. So there's probably a lot of incentive for him to join. There's probably recruiters and all that stuff.
Not to mention the honor that comes along with being a veteran.
Oh yeah,
for your country. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. There's no reports of any issues during his time in the Army. However, when he was discharged, he claimed that he was a victim of a mustard gas attack, which we've seen in cases prior to this one. We've seen gas attacks, and it definitely, there's no denying its effect and what it can do to a person, like long term. It can completely change them.
You think this played into his psyche?
I kind of believe this, even though I believe he was a hypochondriac. But like some of the things that happened to him as a result of the mustard gas attack, he said that he was hospitalized and he lost sight and the ability to speak at a normal volume. There was an actual term, hysterical muteness, and it lasted about 3 years for him, where he could no longer speak at a normal volume. He'd like whisper all the time.
But wouldn't hysterical,
which would make him even creepier. Imagine him, the way he looks, and then he's whispering.
Wouldn't hysterical be insinuating that it's fake?
No, hysterical mean that like.
What do you mean?
Because of the trauma, I believe that he had experienced. It did trigger something in his brain where he could no longer speak at a normal. Maybe it was when he talked loud, it would bring back painful memories, some sort of a PTSD.
Oh, so he was physically. I see what you're saying. So he was physically able to do it. He just had these.
I don't know, dude.
Blocks.
Look it up. Look up hysterical muteness. It's something that's probably it's interesting to me, so it might be interesting to a lot of listeners.
It's a disorder of the vocal function without changing the integrity of the body, resulting in a loss of voice. Without changing the integrity of the body. So
there was nothing physically wrong. So he could talk at a normal level, so it was a mental thing. Probably trauma-induced.
Could be, yeah. Interesting.
Maybe it was too intense for him to talk at a normal level. I don't know. During this time, his voice was barely above a whisper, and most people thought he was faking to get attention.
I'm sure it came in handy.
It's one of those things where it's brutal because, like, what if he wasn't faking it? That's pretty messed up to just assume he was.
Well, look, if his brain had so much power over his physical being to where like he was incompetent as a teenager, you know what I'm saying? And then, or sexually incompetent rather, as a teenager, then yeah, like his mental blocks are pretty fucking strong.
And what if schizophrenia gets a really bad rap in that if it's real to them, then what's the difference? You know what I mean? Maybe it's not even like something a doctor can diagnose as like, I can see your vocal cords are messed up. We're looking and they're not.
Yeah.
But if it's real to him and he's unable to talk like at a normal level, then it's still a disorder and it's something that should be treated seriously, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, your perception of it is everything.
Exactly.
That's
that. And if it's real enough for him that he can't have an erection, that's a real thing he's dealing
what
with.
I'm saying.
That's unfortunate.
Especially as a high schooler. It's like, Jesus, like you said, it's like a nuisance in high school. It's like, okay, hey, chill out.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And this guy can't. Like, that's a huge mental block right there.
Right.
Like, he's giving a lot of power to his psyche.
Yep. And so sometime around 1919, I guess that was around the end of World War I, he met Ethel Waddington Simpson. And in 1920, when he was 21 and Ethel was 22, they got married. And the relationship was kind of always rocky and completely, obviously sexually dysfunctional. He was never able to maintain an erection with like people he was with in a relationship.
Right.
He did, however, learn later that he was able to perform with sex workers. And it was partially, they speculate in the book and stuff that it's because he had the power in that situation.
Because he's paying them.
Because he's paying them,
they
and they
owe
have
him
to
something.
do this.
Yeah. But it also said that, I know in the author that I watched the interview of or listened to, she said that maybe he got the prostitutes to do what he wanted more so. So like maybe he paid them to act dead, or maybe even fake strangled, because like he was known to do this sort of thing.
Oh yeah.
Like behind Ethel's back, he would, hire prostitutes and do like photo shoots. Like he wouldn't even have sex with them, but he would do these photo shoots where they would in sexual positions.
Yeah.
And then he, act like he's choking them or act like they're dead. And
that's very BTK as well. Like the tied up thing, he had to have ropes and stuff like that. If he found a woman that was really into bondage and stuff like that, and he could be with her long term, he might not have killed as many people or any at all. Who knows? I mean, it's a weird sexual thing that is required for them to get off. You could be right on that.
Right.
He needed them to just basically be still. And we've seen it happen a lot of times with a lot of killers. And
oh yeah, they're like, you move too much.
Bundy, right? Wasn't Bundy pretty much like that too?
Yeah.
He preferred him dead.
But what's crazy is John always denied being a necrophiliac, but he didn't realize that whether that person is dead or whether you have to be killing them during sex, get an erection, you're still a necrophiliac.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like if that person is still alive, but you're in the process of killing them, you're still a necrophiliac.
Yeah.
I mean, and he always denied it. But
to get off sexually, if the person has to be dead at some point, whether they die after you finish, it's still, yeah. It makes you wonder, like you've like heard of these real doll things? They're like just really expensive, but they're basically like a complete model of a real person.
Right, yeah. I've seen
woman,
those.
man, whatever. They cost like thousands of dollars or whatever, and you can customize them. Like, I wonder if those have saved lives, or if they could save lives.
Yeah.
If, like these type of people, if they were made available to them.
Like Westworld.
Like if
Westworld existed,
you could apply and say, I can only get off if the person doesn't move or they're virtually dead. Like, you could apply, and then the government could like give you one like to save lives. I don't know.
How cool?
Yeah,
that
like
would
you
be
said,
crazy.
like Westworld.
Like if Westworld existed, and it wasn't so much, obviously.
Yeah.
These guys could come and they could just go and just get their rocks off on some robots. Yeah. I don't know if that's really healthy, but I mean, I think eventually that's
healthier than
enough.
killing people.
But do you think it won't always be enough? It would never always be enough.
Right. Probably not, because that's the knowing that you're.
I said that weird.
It's a real person.
Always, whatever. Yeah, it's not a real person.
We know what you meant. Yeah, but I mean, you kind of need to know it's a real person, right? I guess. I don't know. I'm trying to get into the psyche of a creep here.
Right.
So he had married Ethel when she was 22 and he was 21.
Right.
But he had been already seeing prostitutes since the age of 19, and we talked about how he was able to actually perform with them.
Right.
And so you got to know, like with Ethel, there was no real sex going on, and there's kind of evidence in the fact that they never had children and there was no contraception. And everybody else was having kids.
Right. I think Ethel was just a cover. It was just like, I need to have her so people aren't suspicious of the single strange guy coming and going from the flat all the time,
Right. But after 4 years together, they would become separated, finally, in 1934. Now, during their time apart,
they would get back together in 1934. They were separated for 10 years, dude.
Yeah, and it was a real interesting time in John's life.
Yeah.
That 10 years. He needed her. He needed her around, because he goes off the rails when she goes away.
Oh, you want to meet for coffee and get caught up?
So, what have you been doing? Living in alleys in the seediest parts of Britain that you can imagine.
Right.
Not much,
Right.
in and out of prison.
Prostitutes with cricket bats, that sort of thing.
Jesus. Yeah, so during their time apart, John was in and out of prison many times. While he was, he'd become a postman, and during his time as a postman, He was arrested for the theft of postal orders, so he's stealing the mail. Served 3 months in prison for that. Next, he was arrested for obtaining money by false pretenses and violence. So, like mugging someone, I guess.
I don't know.
He used violence and false pretenses to obtain money.
He just never seemed like a very violent person. Like he always took like the easier way out with everybody.
Until he was killing you. That's pretty violent. He's choking you.
No, but but even he used the gas. Yeah, he used the gas. Like he was never
path of least resistance.
Yeah, exactly.
For the false pretenses and violence, obtaining money, he received 12 months probation. After this, he committed 2 larceny crimes. He was sentenced to 9 months in prison. After served 9 months, he moved in with a sex worker, but was eventually arrested for assaulting her when he bashed her in the head with a cricket bat, nearly killing her.
Listen.
Such a British crime, right? It's never going to happen.
So British. It's so British. It was so. This is like the first just terrible lie that he says. Like he's got some really funny alibis. Like I wish I wouldn't have used the "your alibi is hilarious" line for the Jodi Arias one, because this dude. But he claimed that he was taking practice swings. She just came up behind him and he just
my gosh.
caught her on the backswing there.
I had a match coming up this weekend, you know. I was really getting into it.
Want to get the old shoulders loose?
Hitting the training hard, you know. And she walked right in.
She came right in the flat. I told her, watch out when I'm playing cricket in here.
You know, the fact that I hit a few more times, you know, that's hit neither here nor there.
I just want to teach you a lesson.
Jesus. Yeah, because he nearly killed the woman.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, it was noted by the court magistrate later that it was a nearly murderous attack. And so, yeah. And some more funny crimes. In 1933, he stole a priest's car.
Why?
This dude's just living the life. As soon as he got divorced, dude, he
just went fucking Grand Theft Auto on fucking London.
Right? I don't even know if they officially got divorced. Him and Ethel, I think they just separated for a while, right? Because they later got back together.
Yeah, so, for 10 years. Yeah. They separated for 10 years.
And so for stealing the priest's car in 1933, he was sentenced to 3 months in prison. And in 1937, 3 years after John and Ethel got back together, they moved into 10 Rillington Place in an address which would become infamous. 10 Rillington Place.
It's a good address for like a creepy.
Interesting. Rillington Place was an interesting street. It was basically a cul-de-sac, very, very low income, like the seediest people in town at the time lived here pretty much.
Now it's a nice area here.
Yeah. Well, at the time in the 30s, it was a cul-de-sac and it had like almost like a big brick prison wall at the front that surrounded it. And it was like 3-story flats, like apartment style flats.
Yeah.
And I mean, people
what it reminded
of all walks of life lived in it.
It reminded me of like Dahmer's apartment. You know how Dahmer lived in the slums? And it worked out perfectly for these dudes because
people looked the other way.
Well, yeah, not only that, but these guys, in comparison, like these prostitutes would rather go with somebody like John, who was, relatively clean-cut looking guy or whatever. He was able to gain people's trust because
he seemed
the alternatives
compared to everybody else.
And then there's also widows from the war who had nowhere else to go.
Very important to note that there was a lot of single women because a lot of their men had gone off to war, and then they didn't have any options. They didn't have any income, so they would become sex workers a lot of times, and that's so he had so many options. Like you said with Dahmer, it's not only would people look the other way if weird stuff was going on, they didn't want to get involved, they didn't want to get the police involved, but also like his victims were right there. Like he could choose people who were already in a dire position, women who got pregnant that didn't want to be pregnant anymore, and we talked about how abortion was illegal. That's how he got several of his victims on those pretenses of I can help you get rid of that baby. So we'll get into that. But he moves to Rillington Place with Ethel. Very extremely run down and dirty place. All of the residents had one bathroom, which was located outdoors. So they all had to use the same bathroom outdoors.
Right.
They didn't have bathrooms in the building.
In the backyard or the garden. Rather.
Yeah. Each apartment consisted of a bedroom, kitchen, and living room all in the same room. So it was like basically like a studio apartment type thing. But
remember that when we're talking about bodies later.
Yes. Right. When he has several bodies in there and like people are coming over.
In a studio apartment.
What does that smell, mate?
Yeah.
It's everybody's cooking. That was one of his excuses, remember?
It's the Jamaicans downstairs. Because there was an uprise of people from the Caribbean coming because they helped fight in the war.
Yeah.
On their side. So like they were like, you're welcome to come. Yeah. Enjoy our slums. Right. And that's pretty much where they all went. And
so in 1939, John enlisted as a member of the War Reserve Police. And this started at the start of World War II. Apparently, nobody looked into his past crimes or he would have been rejected. Obviously, almost beating a woman to death with a cricket bat, stealing a priest's car.
I don't think so.
Just a few things.
I don't think he would have been rejected because of the dire need for officers at this time.
Yeah.
They're willing to take anybody who's half
They
decent.
probably just willingly didn't look into it because they just didn't want to know.
Exactly. Don't ask, don't tell. And this guy has military experience already.
Looks the part, seems serious.
Let's do it.
Big forehead.
We're 30 people short.
Right.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
You said big forehead.
So he becomes this war reserve police officer, and he gets what he wants. He becomes BTK, BTK was measuring people's lawns and giving them a hard time, giving them tickets, following around women. That's what he starts to do.
Harassing certain ones,
That's absolutely what he started. He becomes a special constable, and that lasted 4 years. He was doing this, and he got to wear his suit and walk around like a big man. He loved this job, and he became known as the Himmler of Rillington Place. So he just terrorized everybody.
Yeah.
Heydrich Himmler from World War II.
Right.
Famous German Nazi officer, terrible person.
I could see that. He probably got a few ladies' attention though with this uniform too, though.
Yeah,
I think, and it also gave him another.
Oh, dude, he would
mark in the trust column.
Well, not only that, I mean, he would clearly use it. Like he would harass these sex workers and in a means blackmail them into doing sex acts for him to get them off of whatever trouble he was going to get them into.
Right.
I'll look the other way if you help me out.
Right, exactly. If you just lay here.
Right.
Stop moving.
Yeah. So in 1943, he finally resigned from his job, and it wasn't clear at the time. However, it becomes clear later when you realize why in 1943 what he had done. He thought it would be a wise move considering he'd killed a person, but we'll get into that.
This was also funny, like just to line the timeline up, this is the second day of the smog. So a lot of businesses were inactive.
Oh, really?
Not a lot of people were going to work at this time anyways. And he
he resigns from a job that he has.
And he may have just been like, you know what, fuck it. This is the perfect time. Nothing's going on. The factory probably wasn't running at full speed anyways, or, whatever he's doing. So
he would then begin his life of murder around 1943 when he had resigned from his job, and he may have resigned due to the fact that he had already committed his first murder.
Could have.
However, it would be years before his first murders would come to light. So we're going to jump ahead 5 years, and then we'll get back to the murders and backtrack because an important thing happens in 1948, and this is when he first becomes kind of part of a criminal investigation by the police for something serious as murder. He had met a person named Timothy and Beryl Evans, a couple that had moved to Rillington Place.
They were upstairs neighbors of his.
Yes, and so at one point, Beryl and a friend were in Timothy and Beryl's apartment when suddenly the neighbor, John Christie, was standing in the room. He was not invited and was not supposed to be there. Though the girls were shocked and probably frightened, John continued standing there and just staring at them. They were able eventually to get him to leave by telling him Beryl's husband would be home at any moment. So this tells you...
This is another BTK thing.
Oh, yeah.
He may have been there before they got there, for all they know. He could have already been in the house because everything that I read said that they had no idea how he got in. They didn't hear him come in. Yeah. And we're talking about studio apartments. Again, we're not talking about like they're in the back hall in the master bedroom and he's coming in. No.
Like, one room.
Yeah, one room, people. And like they didn't know he was there.
So Timothy and Beryl move into Rillington Place. They become neighbors with John. He becomes acquainted with them and he starts being creepy is what we're saying. He's in the apartment when he shouldn't be, and the friends of them are noticing, like, because John had known something about this couple that everybody knew about them, and that they had a really low IQ. They were almost mentally handicapped, this couple. The only reason they even had an apartment was because Beryl's sister had gotten the apartment for them, helped them pay bills and stuff like that. They were very, like, Timothy's IQ was around 70 which is...
It gives you some perspective.
You can barely, like, function without help.
So so at that state, he's not getting good work. He's never getting good work. He's always been blue-collar worker. He's probably working in factories, mines, whatever he's doing. And they're barely making it by. Yeah, and they had a daughter. Beryl gave birth to their first child, a daughter named Geraldine, shortly after moving in, and so they've now got a mouth to feed, and they need help. And the sister and like Beryl's family's helping them in a lot of ways, but John, I think, saw an opportunity here, and he started like almost stalking Beryl in a sense. Whenever Tim was away, he would come over and he didn't like Tim. But
of course not. He was in his way.
Probably because Tim didn't like him for fucking showing up at his house. Because Beryl had to be telling him like, John Christie was standing in our living room earlier.
Yeah. And Timothy was no saint either. They were known to get into loud
Hell
verbal
no.
arguments. He drank heavily all the time. And so that's where we're at when John finds out by talking to Beryl that she is pregnant again.
Yeah.
They have their daughter, Geraldine.
And she's like, there's no way we can afford this.
Yeah, her and Timothy are fighting more because of the fact that he's saying there's no way we can have another kid, but there's no abortion.
No,
at the
Timothy
time.
wanted to have another kid.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, Timothy wanted to have another child.
But she knew they couldn't afford
Beryl's
it.
like, there's no way we can afford this. We're barely making it as it is.
Well, and he did. It's not like he was like, well, I'll just work more. He was going to just keep drinking.
He was just going to keep drinking and working what he was doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, she knew it wasn't a good situation for a baby to come into the world. And she was looking for a way to try and solve this. And she talks to John Christie, the good old helpful neighbor.
Oh, yeah.
And the Himmler of Rillington Place. And he says, I've got a solution for you. I learned a little bit of medical in my time as a reserve police officer.
What?
He had this medical book he would like flip through and show him real quick. Like, look, I've got a book.
Did he have a book, really?
Yes, he had a medical book and he would like flip through it and show people like, look, there's pages with writing in there.
Oh my God.
That doesn't mean I read
Because
it.
they couldn't read anyway. So he's just like,
Look, it's a real book.
it's just a phone book. He's just flipping through. These numbers are the prescriptions. Yeah.
Yeah, so as we mentioned again, abortion was illegal in the UK at the time, but he convinced Timothy that he was knowledgeable about medical procedures, flipped through his medical book to prove it, and he convinced them that he could do this procedure. And so he gets Beryl to come over, just her,
Alone,
and they're alone in his apartment, and he tells her he's going to give her some sort of a gas to put her to sleep, right, so that he could perform this procedure so she wouldn't feel it.
Exactly.
But however, the tube that he has her breathe is connected to his coal stove,
Right.
which is carbon monoxide. She loses consciousness. He then proceeded to rape her while he strangled her to death. It is reported that he would begin the rape before the death, and he wouldn't finish until after the death.
Right.
Which is some
So it's definitely
very
necrophiliac
disgusting details
shit
he told
right
the
there.
police later, is that she became incapable to maintain bowel control and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. A lot
As
of times-
several of his victims.
Yeah.
And he would use, as we've seen in the past with certain people, I think Gacy did it, where they would use like a towel to insert into orifices to hold in the
There's been quite a few that have done things
fluids.
like that.
Yeah. When Timothy returned home that evening, John told him that Beryl had died during the abortion procedure. Now, Timothy had told John that that Beryl was going to take some pills, right, to try and end the pregnancy.
Yes.
And she had taken these pills, and that's what John used to turn this onto Tim. And he said that she died due to toxicity from the pills.
Right, yeah.
And he kind of turned it into Timothy's fault.
Yeah, and Timothy kind of believed it, I think,
well,
for a
he had-
minute.
I
I
mean,
think
he
for
had
a
an
minute
IQ
he
of
believed
70.
it.
So Timothy admitted that Beryl had taken some pills. John convinced Timothy that the cause of death was due to septic poisoning, and there was nothing he could do to save her. Now, he also said to Tim that, we can go to the police. However, we're both going to go down for this. And I believe he told Tim that he had already buried her body in his backyard. Or no, he told him that he'd put her in a sewer drain, right?
Well, that's what Timothy told the police.
Well, that's what John had told him. That's why he said, I already disposed of her body down the sewer drain. And that's why Tim would later tell the police that, thinking that was the truth.
Yeah.
However, the police would later not be able to find the body in there because it was buried in John's backyard already.
Right. But the whole thing with Geraldine just it
Mind-blowing,
just
right?
throws the...
Well, let's get into it.
All right.
So Geraldine, obviously, is another
Right.
thing we have to talk about, because when Tim came over, I believe he had his daughter Geraldine, and that's when he finds out the news from John that
Right.
that Beryl had died. And so then John, I don't understand this at all.
This is so weird.
It just doesn't, because what is John's motivation? So John tells Tim that he has a place that he knows of that the people could take care of his infant daughter. He knows of a couple that would
Right.
love to have a young daughter, and that she could go stay with his aunt in Wales. And Timothy agrees to this, so gives his daughter over to this guy. He just finds out his wife's dead. and now
Timothy's
he's-
a piece of shit, but I don't know. That just seems crazy. I mean, maybe if he was really convinced that her life would be better, and he doesn't want the responsibility anyways.
talked about his really low IQ, and he's probably in shock that his wife has just killed. A lot of whatever I read and watched, they all justified Timothy's actions to give over Geraldine to
I know.
John, and I just can't.
I can't do it.
And I don't understand John's motivation at all.
No, I don't either, because he killed for sexual pleasure, and this is a baby.
It doesn't connect. Yeah, I just don't. Unless he was also a pedophile too. It's like,
unless he just was tying up loose ends. Because if you do take the child somewhere, but why not just take the child to a church? Why not just take the child to a fire department?
Right.
Like these places will accept them.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand that, because
well, Timothy
could have done the same thing. Why would Timothy give his daughter to him?
Well, this tells you
a guy he doesn't like.
Right.
Too. Remember, they don't like each other.
Well, not only that, Timothy had a family. He had a mother who later got outraged by the fact that this story that Timothy would tell her about. Oh yeah, then she died doing an abortion, and I gave the daughter to a neighbor's aunt. The mother became outraged, and that's what she makes him go to the police station.
Yeah.
So that tells you right there, Timothy's mother would have taken Geraldine.
Absolutely.
The grandmother the birth grandmother would have taken the daughter. So why would he give his daughter to this neighbor guy? None of it makes any sense. He had to have somehow played a role in it or done it himself. I just don't get it. None of it makes sense. The story that's reported by books and documentaries, none of it makes sense to me. Why he would give his daughter to this neighbor whose wife was just died in this guy's custody.
Right.
Whether he believed the pills killed her or not. Like,
you think maybe Timothy, upon hearing the news that his wife was killed, realized that he couldn't take care of his daughter, and maybe in anger and frustration, maybe he's seen his wife in her or whatever, maybe he killed her and then just put her in the back with his wife, Beryl.
I don't. I think if I have to pick a scenario, okay,
I know that doesn't make sense.
Here's my scenario. Tim was there during this. No, he wasn't there. So Tim wasn't there, but I think potentially Geraldine and Beryl went over there for the abortion thing. Maybe.
So you think Geraldine was with Beryl that day?
Yeah.
Not with Timothy. Okay.
John kills them both because to tie up loose ends.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Timothy finds out, John told him both of them are dead, and he threatened him, like, I will go to the police and we'll both go down for this.
Yeah.
Or you can just look the other way, type of thing. Tell your family that she went to live with a couple.
Why would John kill the little girl, though?
I don't know. I mean, if she could talk, but she wasn't old enough, right?
She's only 18 months old. I mean, she may have been mumbling some things, whatnot. It's a year and a half.
Yeah.
I mean, your son just turned a year. He's not close to talking.
Right.
If he saw something, he wouldn't be able to retain, you know what I'm saying? But you can't say...
I can't think of a scenario which makes sense in this.
It'd be so much easier just to put her in a car seat and take her to a fire department and leave.
Well, what we do know is that Geraldine ended up buried in the backyard with his mother, Beryl. That's what we know.
Yep.
Because
they were in the shed. They were in the bathhouse.
Oh, they were in a shed on John's property.
Exactly. We're not talking about the buried bodies yet.
Okay, so how does that happen?
That's what I'm saying. I don't
Unless they were both there originally. Tim comes over, discovers what had happened. Maybe John told him that he had already sent Geraldine off to live with his aunt. That makes sense, right?
Yeah, but as Timothy, you would have to be furious. Like, even if you don't even love her, like, just the audacity of a man taking your child's well-being.
Your wife's dead, and I gave your daughter away.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the audacity of this motherfucker. Like, what? You can't just let that go.
Yeah.
I don't see it, especially since these two men hated each other, which that was true. They hated each other.
Yeah.
They fought all the time, and that's why John never showed up when Timothy was at home.
Yeah. Well, when Timothy goes to, he didn't have anywhere to go, so he went to his mom's house, and he explained to her what had happened. My wife died, and my daughter, I gave her away to a neighbor's aunt. And, of course, his mother is outraged. Like, what are you talking about? And so she forces him to go to the police. He finally reports what had happened to the police, and he says that it was his fault, that he had given some pills to his wife to have an abortion. She had died, and they could find the body in a drain.
Mm-hmm.
In the sewer drain where John had told him that she was. And so the police respond. They go to the sewer drain, and they don't find the body. They questioned Timothy a second time, and he changed his story and said that John was the one who killed Beryl during a botched abortion. The police then went back to the apartment complex to do a more thorough search, during which they entered the wash house at the back of John's garden / backyard.
Mm-hmm.
and they weren't able to get the door open as it was stuck shut. However, Ethel Christie helped out by handing them a piece of metal to pry the door open. This is where they found the body of not only Beryl Evans, but Geraldine Evans as well, the baby, 18-month-old. They had both been strangled. Beryl had been gassed, strangled, and raped, and the 18-month-old Geraldine was strangled with a man's tie, which was still around her neck.
Yeah, and neither of the men claimed the tie, of course.
Right. Timothy is asked again if he was responsible for the death of his wife, and this time they also asked if he was responsible for the death of his child. According to Timothy, this is the first time that he'd heard his daughter had been killed. He told them that he was indeed responsible for their death, stating that he strangled Beryl during an argument about money and then strangled Geraldine
So now he's
2 days
flip-flopped
later.
again.
Unreal.
He's flip-flopped again. Like,
I just can't for the life of me understand how anyone, no matter what their IQ was, would admit to, unless there was some real police coercion going on, like we've seen with the West Memphis 3, like we've seen with
now that is a
Making
theory.
a Murderer,
There
where they
is a theory that
Well, Timothy's story changed multiple times, and in that they only had written record back then. They didn't have any audio recordings, and he was known to not be able to read or write. So they're writing things down and showing it to him to sign, and he can't read what they're writing. And a lot of the statements, when they were later analyzed, they looked and they said, this is something that this man would never have said. He didn't have the equivalency. He didn't have an intelligence, the vocabulary, the intelligence level to use words like these. Yeah, so kind of the general idea, consensus is that the police coerced him, knowing that he had a really low IQ and that there was only written record, and it was kind of their say. Yeah, they believed that he had done it because of his past. They knew there was.
That's what I was about to say.
Many reports of him being abusive and drunken.
They had been to the
flat before.
Yeah, to the Evans household a few times
at Rillington Place.
Yeah,
and I think John seems to be a guy that has got his shit together.
Not only that, John is a veteran. Yeah. Now he's an officer.
Well, it was. I mean, he'd resigned,
yeah,
but
well, still, but
they didn't know why he'd resigned.
Yeah, but he still had that to his credit. You know what I'm saying? He's a little more trustworthy of a citizen in their eyes, especially, I would think.
Yeah. And so despite his best efforts to convince the police of his innocence, Timothy was arrested and charged with the murder of Geraldine, his daughter. And they chose to prosecute him for Geraldine's murder because it was a cleaner case. It was a daughter who would have, there was no argument like she egged him on to do such a thing. It was a crime of passion or anything like that. It was egged on by the fighting with, or any self-defense. Obviously, there's no self-defense, you could argue. It was an 18-month-old baby that was strangled with a necktie, and there's no argument against it.
Right.
And so the justice system in the UK only allows someone to be tried for one murder at a time, and they decided to go after Timothy for the murder of his daughter rather than his wife because it was more likely to be found guilty as a child killer. Nobody wants to be the one to let the child killer go free either.
Exactly.
And so in January of 1950, the case went to trial, and yours truly, John Christie, was a key witness for the prosecution.
Well, somebody's got to tell the truth.
Hey, man.
Somebody's got to come up there and tell the truth.
He took the stand with that big forehead.
Yeah.
Can't do it, Christie.
Blinding
Told
people.
the truth up there, damn it.
Had it all shined up.
Yeah, and he was the reason, largely, that Timothy was there in the first place, obviously.
Right.
I mean, he was the only reason Timothy was there, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And Timothy was found guilty and sentenced to the death by hanging after John Christie's testimony up on the fucking stand. And he was said to handle himself really well up there and seemed like a,
it's funny.
Jolly old fellow there. Yeah.
You know what's funny? This is not really giving away anything, but this is something that just occurred to me. During his testimony against Timothy, he was very loudly spoken and very sure and very confident. And then with his trial, when he was on the stand, they said that he was all of a sudden he had mustard gas issues again. All of a sudden he couldn't speak loud enough so they could hear him.
Kicking in again.
Yeah, he had to constantly be told to speak up over and over again. I just think that's funny that none of that came up in Timothy's case.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. This is something that's interesting. When it's reported that when the ruling was read that Timothy was going to be sentenced to die, John burst into tears. And there's some speculation as to why, if it was his relief that it wasn't him going down for this murder, or if he actually felt guilty for sending an innocent man to the gallows.
You think they're happy tears?
I probably.
Yeah, I think they are too.
Sociopath. Yeah. I didn't think he'd give a fuck about anybody else but himself. A swift turnaround in the justice system in Britain at the time meant that 2 months after he was convicted and sentenced, he was hanged. and his life was over.
Not mess around.
Yeah, John had gotten away with murder in a less direct way, as we'd mentioned at the beginning of this case.
Allegedly.
Something we've never really delved into in this. There's never been this scenario in all the cases we've done where a killer killed in more ways than one like that, to that extent, where someone else got charged for a murder he did, and it was actually sentenced, and actually the sentence was carried out, and the person was killed. So this dude got away with killing this guy's wife, daughter, and then him after getting him
pretty much
sentenced for the crime that he had committed. Unbelievable.
Yeah, he probably just wanted his flat. No, I was tired of being on the bottom floor.
Yep.
No,
now, there was one thing that was unfortunate for John throughout the whole trial process, was that during Timothy's trial, for which he was a key witness, John's past arrest and jail stints were made public by the defense. And because of this, he was fired from his job that he had at the time. I forget what he was doing. But
he was working in a radio factory, I think, still at this point.
By August of 1950, 5 months after the trial, he found a new job in a clerical position with the British Road Transport Services. He was there for 2 years before resigning, claiming to his boss and his neighbors that he had found a job in Sheffield and that he'd be moving there with his wife, Ethel. However, that was a cover-up due to the fact that his wife, in 1952, his wife, Ethel, had gone missing. Mm-hmm. And when you live with a serial killer and he's your husband, you're bound to go missing, right?
Yeah, your odds climb to a pretty high.
John explained this away by telling everyone that Ethel had already moved to Sheffield and that he'd be moving there soon. I'm on my way. Right. The reality was that on December 14th, 1952, 8 days after he resigned from his job, he had murdered Ethel while she laid in their bed. And there is a lot of speculation as to why this occurred, and maybe due to pressure by her realizing what he'd been up to.
I like John's testimony myself.
What was it?
You know, she was choking. She woke up choking, and so he decided to choke her some more.
Put her out of her misery.
It's a kind of a reverse psychology thing. It's like, are you really choking? And instead of doing the Heimlich, you do the old Himmler maneuver on her.
Oh my God!
You know, is it too far?
We're talking about poor Ethel, his wife. She didn't do anything.
Ethel did not deserve this shit.
She may have discovered that her husband was up to no good and confronted him and threatened to go to the authorities, and that's why he decided to strangle her.
That sounds, or at least she was keeping closer tabs on him.
Yeah,
I think she was definitely a nuisance. And like we said, the small flat. It's not like he was going to be able to be bringing bodies in and out of there and whatnot.
And also known like. He was no longer able to bury any bodies in the backyard or anything like that in the garden, due to the fact that the Rillington Place had become just filled. Like all the rooms were full. There were so many people coming and going from the street all through 24 hours a day that there was no time that he could dispose. That's why you see the change in the disposal of bodies.
Oh yeah, and this is where a lot of the people from the Caribbean are coming in, because that was his first lie. Because he said that she had committed suicide because she was upset with all the Caribbean people moving into her building, and it was just destroying her life.
No, John, that's your racism, not hers.
Yeah, exactly. That's such bullshit.
Right.
That was his first lie.
Yeah.
And then he came up with she was choking, so I decided to help her by choking her.
Yeah. He then hid her body under the floorboards of his flat and attempted to cover his tracks by writing letters to her sister for about a month. That kind of shit is so gross to me.
That is.
Claiming that she had rheumatism and she was unable to write on her own. He then proceeded to sell all of Ethel's jewelry, including her wedding band. And in the following weeks, he would sell all but a few basic pieces of furniture, forge Ethel's signature so that he could empty her bank account and stopped answering any letters from family asking about Ethel. So there's some more motive there. Maybe he just needed money and she was just a nuisance in his life, and now he could do what he wanted and kill more frequently without Ethel breathing down his neck. 1 month after he murdered his wife, John would meet Rita Nelson. Rita was visiting her sister when she met John. She was 6 months pregnant and yet still wanted to terminate the pregnancy. She had brought it up in conversation that she wasn't happy and didn't want to have this kid. John then convinced her that he could assist her with this, and she agreed. She came back to his flat where he proceeded to gas her, rape her, and strangle her. Now, it was a little different than the original time he'd done this to Beryl. He now had a method in which he would use what was it, balsam?
Friar's balsam.
Yeah, he would
claim that that's what it was, right? But he would actually be running a hose from the other side of the jar to his to the stove.
Yes,
right?
Yeah, which would make a person pass out due to carbon monoxide poisoning.
Like we said, he always took the easy way out as far as killing someone. And if he could incapacitate them, he was going to do that first. He was not a very strong man at this time. It's worth noting that his health was like really declining. Yeah. He had like a lot of intestinal issues. He had like bad gas. As weird as that sounds. So maybe that was his excuse for the smell in the apartment.
Oh, I'm sure it was. Well, he had told someone that came in, right, that it was a terrible combination of everyone's cooking in the building.
Yeah. Dude, who else did that? Dahmer.
Oh, yeah,
remember?
You're right.
Dahmer, well, he said it was his own cooking. At least he took responsibility and said it was his own cooking. Remember?
That's true.
But yeah, John Christie didn't have the audacity. He did have the audacity, just blame it on everybody else.
Right. Well, Dahmer, you say what you want about the guy, but at least he like came clean and like, yeah, it was me. Like when they caught him, he pretty much was like.
I have more empathy for Dahmer than any other serial killer. I think I've talked about that before.
We don't think he could help himself for real. Like,
yeah,
and
he was really messed up.
I felt like he had real remorse for what he had done in the end.
Yeah,
I don't think it was fake.
It seemed like it, right?
It did. Still, I mean, he's fucking obviously horrific person.
Yeah, horrific person, like sick person though. Man. Really,
if you've seen the photos, So we kind of like jumped around, but Rita Nelson, he had gassed her, raped and strangled her, and her body was placed upside down in a hidden alcove behind a cupboard in the kitchen. Fucking horrific image to think like you have this cupboard in your kitchen that's like tucked away, and there's a woman hanging upside down, dead in there.
Yeah, and he would like tuck cloths between their legs, to keep from.
Yeah, man, it's pretty sickening.
Like yeah.
1 month later, so he's really on a roll here. He's hitting his serial killer stride. 1 month later, in February 1953, he took a sex worker, Kathleen Maloney, home. He had met her at a cafe when he spotted her and a friend discussing their search for a place to stay. This is another thing he would use to get people to his place. Like, I got an extra bed at my place.
Right, and they weren't easy to come by right now.
Right.
Places weren't easy to come by. I mean, a place to sleep, and then if I'm sure he's offering them a little bit of money too for favors and whatnot.
Yep.
He's also a quote unquote aspiring photographer, like so many serial killers are.
Yeah.
He had a dark room.
Shtick.
Yeah.
Kathleen was an orphan with 5 illegitimate children. He invited her back to his place, and she was never seen again. As with Beryl and Rita, he had gassed Kathleen, raped her, and strangled her to death. He left Kathleen sitting dead in a chair all night long, which is something he did a few times, which is just tells you how really, truly sick this guy was, how it was just not a big deal.
He really
would kill him, leave him sitting there, and then go to bed. Like have some tea, come out in the morning, have some tea, sit around, and then I guess I should take care of that.
This is where he gets to that John Wayne Gacy confidence.
Right.
Like he's just like, you can't be caught. Like he feels untouchable at this point.
You have a landlord. I imagine the landlord could probably come into your apartment at any time if something weird was going on, right?
They can, yeah.
Imagine she comes in and there's just a dead woman sitting in the kitchen.
Right. Well, like when Ross Ulbricht rented that place in the Silk Road episode, and the landlord came in and found all his mushrooms.
Yeah.
I mean, they can come in for any reason.
So he woke up the next morning, made some tea. He then wrapped her body in a blanket, put a pillowcase over her head, and placed her in the alcove behind the kitchen cupboard with Rita hanging upside down. She was placed on the floor with her legs propped vertically against the wall. He then covered her with dirt and ashes, which is something that no one in the book, nothing could ever really explain why he did that, because it's not like it was going to cover the stench or
I think it was to absorb bodily fluids.
You think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that fine dirt would absorb the bodily fluids, I would think. And it's probably partly some of the smell, and then you could sweep it up later. Yeah.
That makes sense. John's final murder would take place in March 1953. Hectorina McLennan lived in London with her boyfriend, Alex Baker. John had met the two in a cafe, and they proceeded to meet up several times after this. The couple would make it clear to John that they needed a place to stay, and John offered up a place to stay for them at his place. They were looking for a permanent place.
They stayed with him one time before the actual murder, though.
For a few days, right?
I think so.
The stench and everything else is too much.
Yeah, the stench was bad, but the reason the stench was so bad is they were sleeping over Ethel. They slept in his living room
wife.
Over his dead wife, like right over. Like they slept on the floor where she was buried beneath the floorboards.
Do you think he was kind of snickering about that?
Oh, definitely.
Oh, man.
Coming in there every now and then. I apologize for the smell, guys.
Yeah, so they had come and stayed, the couple.
Yeah.
And then they had moved out a few days later, and you can understand why. However, on one occasion, John convinced Hectorina to come back to his flat alone, probably sex services, some type of agreement.
Right.
At which point he murdered her using the same technique he had used on his other victims, gassing, raping, and strangling. Hectorina's boyfriend, Alex, showed up to John's apartment a short time later to find out if he knew where Hectorina was. John convinced him that he hadn't seen her, and he even went as far as to help Alex look for his missing girlfriend.
Now, Hectorina's murder didn't go so smooth, though.
No, she had fought, right?
Yeah, because she was like...
He put this tube up next to her.
Yeah. What he did was he jumped the gun, right? So he had no reason to be gassing her. He had no reason. She wasn't sick. She didn't need an abortion. And then he just sneaks up beside her with a tube. Like, this has got to be such an odd scene, right? Can you imagine somebody just coming up beside you and just putting a tube up to your face? Like, what the fuck is this, dude? Get out of my...
Yeah, I can't even... There's no way I can think of an excuse on the fly. You'd have to really...
I don't know. Like, he just... Like I said, he just got bold, towards the end.
Yeah,
he was just strange. Like... Because I wonder, it obviously didn't take very long. It just took a matter of seconds, probably. For you to pass out from it. I mean, otherwise, could you imagine just sitting there for minutes? Just keep breathing.
The gall, she'd just be sitting there and you just like sneak this tube up next to her. Like, she's not going to notice the smell. Like, at least, like, I don't know. It's messed up to even say the better way to do it. It would just be to grab her and hold the tube against her. But
he was, like I said, he was not a very strong dude, not a big guy. Wasn't looking for...
just confident in general. Like, he probably didn't think he could physically overpower her.
Exactly.
However, unfortunately, she was overtaken by the gas and killed, and would be his final victim. Now, he finally felt that it was time to move out of 10 Rillington Place. And being a nice guy he is, he decided, someone else can live here. And completely against the law, decided to offer his place to a couple looking for a place to stay, and took 3 months advance rent on it. And he had a landlord. He's not allowed to rent out his apartment to someone else.
Right.
And so he, being a nice guy, offers up his place and takes 3 months advance and lets them move into a house where there's 4 bodies inside.
Three bodies
in
inside.
the cupboard and 1 under the floorboards.
Right.
I just don't understand how you could walk in there and not just be absolutely over fucking cum with stench.
Desperate times, man. They had nowhere to go.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of pretty much everything probably stunk in Rillington Place at this time.
Yeah,
but God, that's got to be next level though. 4 bodies in a house. That there was no steps taken to try and preserve the bodies. No. Although, didn't they say that the ones in the cupboard were actually they weren't that decomposed because of how cold it was or something?
Yeah, they said it was cooler around the time. Well, because he was killing them January, February, March.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. Yeah, and in Britain, I imagine it's pretty cold.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for the couple, they had paid John 3 months rent in advance, which they were unable to get back as he had left town. And shortly after, the landlord had realized what had happened and went to them and kicked them out. Mm-hmm. After evicting the couple, the landlord allowed the tenant in the apartment above John's to use the kitchen in 10 Rillington Place as his kitchen, since he was wasn't able to be used.
Right.
And so this guy Beresford, John Beresford Brown, in an attempt to, so he's using John's old kitchen, and in an attempt to attach some brackets to the wall to hold a radio, had found a hollow sounding spot in the wall.
Mm-hmm. This is like something
if
from
you started
right?
If you did a movie on this case, I think
this is where you start it.
You start it right here. This
Absolutely.
Guy's in this kitchen, la da da. I'm gonna hang this radio up.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yep.
Peels back some. He'd gone as far as to put fucking wallpaper over it.
Over it. Yep.
Peels back some wallpaper and discovers this hidden alcove in which there are 3 bodies. The bodies of Kathleen Maloney, Rita Nelson, and Hectorina McLennan, all wrapped up with cloths placed between their legs. And the police were obviously immediately notified and began a real search of John Christie's former property. And John had left town and booked himself into a hostel for a few days. When he ran out of money, he began wandering the streets, and he began seeing news releases in which included a photo of him in his raincoat. So he got a new coat and gave his old one to a different man.
Right.
Hoping they would just arrest that guy, right? But they don't have that same big forehead, bro.
Nah. But he got a hat, though. He finally took our advice and got a hat right here, right?
That's what it was when they found him and they took the hat off. Like, oh, it's him.
Oh, God damn.
That's the head. That's no Dick Christie.
No, that forehead anywhere.
And so he continued to wander around London. He would sleep on park benches and in poorly lit cinemas. Soon after the news broke of the bodies in his apartment, he would be stopped by a police officer and was challenged about his identity. He gave a different name, but when the police told him to take off his hat, it was obvious that's all the identification they needed. And it was at that moment they knew they had their man. At the time, he was carrying only a few coins, a newspaper clipping about the conviction and hanging of Timothy evidence, and his ID. Now, why would he be carrying that news clipping? Some speculate that he had felt bad. I say that it was a trophy.
It was absolutely a trophy.
Yeah. I mean, that's what serial killers do, right?
I can't believe he was still
They don't have
carrying his
remorse.
ID, though. Like, what an idiot.
We just did the one in Alaska where the dude had his own ID, right?
Oh, God, yeah. The McCarthy Massacre.
McCarthy Massacre.
Yeah.
Fucking idiot.
They did the exact same thing, pretty much. It's like, except for in McCarthy. It's
How
like,
hard
dude,
is it to get a fake ID?
it's like, bro, there's like 7 people here. Like, you're
That's
definitely the dude.
That's true. Now, once in custody, John confessed to 5 murders, though he had really killed 8. Until now, only the bodies of Beryl, Geraldine, Kathleen, Rita, and Hectorina had been found. Upon further investigation after John's confession, the police located the body of Ethel Christie under the floorboards, his wife. John then told him that he had killed his wife because she was, as Mike had said earlier, because she was choking, and he thought that he would help her along and end the suffering.
All right.
2 more bodies were also found, located buried in the back garden. Now, these were the bodies of Ruth first. She was 21 years old when she was killed, and a munitions worker who had also earned extra money by selling her body.
Right.
John claims that he had met her while she was working in the streets. He had invited her back to his apartment for sex on August 24th, 1943, 9 years before he killed his wife, and he had murdered Ruth. And that's why he resigned from that reserve police position. This was his first murder in 1943. Yes. Shortly afterwards, he got concerned and resigned from his position.
Gotcha.
And it must have been because he used his position to get to Ruth. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, they could have tied him to it. Yeah.
This being his first murder, he hadn't started using gas yet. He had just strangled Ruth with a rope and put her under the floorboards. He later pulled her out and buried her in the backyard. John and Ethel were married at this point. They had been back together for about 10 years before this murder took place. Ethel was away visiting family when John murdered Ruth in their home, in their bed.
Oh, shit. I didn't know he killed her in their bed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess he must have strangled her. Well, see,
he did with a rope.
Yeah, because he was younger at this time, too.
Yeah.
Like we said, like later on, gas was his only option. I don't think he was even strong enough to choke somebody. I don't think he was. But yeah, early on, like what he did with Beryl as well, you know, they were both strangled. I don't know if we said that or not.
But he would gas them and then strangle them when they were weak or they were passed out. I mean, he always strangled them.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Just to make sure that
so, I guess she may have been gassed.
Yeah. No, they said she wasn't. This first one.
Oh.
This first one, he just strangled her with a rope.
Maybe he realized how hard it was.
Right.
He's like, I need more time. This is just...
Yeah. Oh, that's what they say. They say there's a lot of serial killers who came out and said, and then when they first try to strangle someone, it's way harder than they thought.
Good.
Right.
Good.
But the best adjust.
Oh.
Sorry.
Adapt and overcome, right?
And his second murder, the only one we haven't discussed thus far, would be Muriel Amelia Edie. She was 31 years old. She worked at the same action radio factory as John did at the time. This is where they met. Muriel had suffered from bronchitis, and John convinced her that he had made a special mixture that would cure her. Never believe people when they say they've got some concoction that they can fix you if you come over. This is the first appearance of John's killing jar, using the friar's balsam, at first adding the gas hose to cause his victims to pass out. Once she had passed out, he raped and strangled her. He buried her next to Ruth in the garden. During the search of 10 Rillington Place, in addition to the bodies, police found a tobacco tin filled with pubic hair. Now, this leads to speculation as to whether he had more victims, and he never really gave
somewhere between 4 to 7 tufts. They could tell that like 4 to 7 different types of pubic hair were in this jar.
Yeah. And none of it matched any of the women found in John's apartment or in the garden, which really is a strong case against, or leading to the fact that you think he'd killed more.
You know what I think it's from? I think it's from those prostitutes they took pictures with. Those people.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been
hired because now you have a visual stimulant and a physical stimulant, if you will.
I mean, he could have paid them to cut some of their pubic hair and keep it. I mean, it didn't necessarily have to be victims.
Right. That's what
I
I'm
don't
saying.
know where else he would have put the bodies if he had killed more, you know?
Oh, you think you just ran out of space?
Yeah. I mean, we've seen it before.
Gacy, prime example.
Exactly. Started putting him down in the river, right?
Yeah.
The police could have caught John far earlier than they did, unfortunately. If they'd done more diligent police work, this is every fucking case we do, it seems.
Yeah.
If they, it's not an easy job.
Are we talking about the first search of the property? When
there's a goddamn femur bone holding up a fence. When they did their search for Beryl Evans in 1949, when they found the bodies in the bodies of Beryl and Geraldine, they completely missed a femur bone holding up a part of the fence in the backyard. Femur bone, which was one of his first victims. Femur bones.
From your waist to your knee. I mean, that's
a big bone. It's the biggest bone in your body.
It is.
Literally.
How do you... I don't know how that was overlooked.
Yep, that and the obvious, which was the stench coming from his apartment complex.
Right.
However, it was a disgusting place to begin with. But how would the police not recognize the smell of decomposing bodies when they did a search of his place?
Exactly. Makes no sense.
In 1953, John would be tried for the murder of his wife. Now, remember, he could only be tried for one murder at a time, which was the standard procedure back then in Britain. Throughout the investigation, it would be revealed that John would gas these women and then rape them while strangling them to death. Some of the women he would still be raping when they were actually dead. He wanted to distance himself from the necrophilia, so he said he would stop raping once they were dead, but this is actually still considered a form of necrophilia.
Yeah, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah. John confessed to the murders of everyone except 18-month-old Geraldine. Now, there's plenty of reasons why he would do that. Obviously, someone in prison would be treated much differently if you were known as a child killer.
Absolutely.
And maybe that even goes beyond what I can be known as a serial killer who kills women. He was kind of proud of it later.
Well, yeah.
He bragged about being a serial killer later, but he never wanted to be known as someone who would kill an 18-month-old person.
That's why I don't think he did do that, because...
Yes, he did.
You think he did?
Absolutely.
Well, I don't know, but
I don't think he was proud of it, but I think he did it.
Well, his defense attorney was wanting him to basically take responsibility for as many murders as he could. Like, they put him... The defense attorney was trying to convince him to take responsibility for a teen's murder that was like in another town where he hadn't even been.
Why?
To be insane. Because if he keeps admitting to these crazy things, then eventually, and that's where he drew the line. He was like, "No, I don't kill kids. I'm not saying any of that. I'm not coming across with any of that." But that doesn't mean he didn't kill Geraldine. I'm just saying, he definitely prided himself on being a woman killer, like he did.
Not a baby killer.
Not a kid killer.
Yeah.
Somebody who wants to make that distinction obviously takes pride in what they did.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at.
Right. Well, after John's confession, there was a widespread outrage which prompted further investigation into Timothy's guilt, the man who had already been hung for the death of Geraldine. Mm-hmm. And eventually it was concluded that John did in fact kill Beryl, but did not kill Timothy's daughter Geraldine. The ruling did not satisfy everyone, though. Most thought Timothy was innocent and couldn't understand how he would have been found guilty when there was no proof beyond reasonable doubt. The uproar and further investigation eventually led to Timothy receiving an official pardon. However, he was never officially acquitted for the crime. I mean, he was dead already, but just for the families, just...
the whole... the fact that the bodies were brought up, were found in John's
flat.
Well, not his flat, but his
I'm
talking about Geraldine and Beryl. They were found in his shed. Yeah. That was never brought up by the prosecution because I think it was because that prosecution was the same, that lawyer was the same one that killed Timothy.
Yeah, and they didn't want to
admit they fucked up. And if he brings that up now,
the first one.
Yeah, and especially since they were strangled. He didn't bring up the fact that they were strangled either. Yeah. Anytime they were mentioned. Like, it totally fits John's MO.
Absolutely.
And it's like, that's why that wasn't brought up. So many people,
because the other women in the alcove, right? Weren't they found with ties around their neck, some of them too? So, it completely fit Geraldine's murder.
Absolutely.
She still had a fucking tie around her neck. That's exactly, that's John to a T. That's what he would do. That being said, all the photos I've looked at from even Timothy, the photos of him, he's wearing a tie too.
He is.
So, it was an easy thing to strangle with, and everybody seemed to have one.
Okay, but still, I think at this time, in the 50s, I think if you're going to get your picture taken, you're going to be dressed up too. So,
yeah,
I don't think, but he obviously had one. So that's all it would take. It wouldn't take having to wear one every day or whatever.
Right. So Timothy's family in the early 2000s attempted to reopen the case to get him acquitted. However, the time and expense involved in such an old case was deemed too high, and it never moved forward. In 2003, his sisters received an ex gratia payments made to the family because of the gross miscarriage of justice. These payments are not legally required, but are paid out out of a sense of moral obligation. So The British judicial system felt bad enough about what had happened to her brother that they started giving her monthly checks as a kind of a
right. Yeah, that helps.
Right. Coincidence.
I mean, I guess it does.
Yeah, I mean it's better,
especially if she hated him.
Right. Coincidentally, John was tried in the same courtroom where Timothy had been tried for the murder of Geraldine. He pleaded insanity and had spent a lot of time trying to make himself seem crazy in order to convince the others he was insane, and as well as his defense attorney did, as we talked about. His defense team even decided to bring up all of the other murders that were committed in order to make him look more insane, as he had brought up.
Right.
This obviously backfired, as all they did was prove he was a murderer. He was ruled. Ended up being ruled competent to stand trial after 85 minutes of deliberation and was found guilty. There was no appeal, and a month after his trial, on July 15th, 1953, John CantDoIt Christie was hanged for his crimes, and this Sunday will be 65 years since he was executed. And once again, in a fit of irony, his executioner's name was Albert Pierrepoint, the same executioner who hung Timothy.
Yeah, he's like a famous executioner.
And I love the cases where there's an execution in the end, because there's always something funny that happened leading up to it.
Yeah.
And in this one, of course, there is.
He took one last chance, didn't he?
Yeah. So right before the execution, John complained to Albert, the executioner, that his nose was itchy. And Albert famously reassured him that it won't bother you for long.
Bother you for long, mate.
I can help you with that. We got a couple fun facts thanks to the Crime Line by Michelle Cate. Rillington Place would be renamed in order to distance itself from what happened there. It didn't work, and decades later, the building would be torn down. And in the 1970s, a movie was being made about John's murders, and the filmmakers asked the residents of the complex if they would be willing to move out for a while so the filming could take place in 10 Rillington, where the killings happened, and the tenants refused to leave.
Nah.
So all the interior shots happened in number 7, not number 10, not the famous room where.
That's all good. They're probably all laid out
Close
exactly
enough.
the same. Yeah.
We can get the image right.
It's funny that people just continued to rent it for decades, and through the 70s. Look, the movie was made in the 70s. That's 2 decades. People continued to rent this apartment.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, it's a nice place now, though.
Yeah.
I mean, the apartment's not there anymore, but the area, it's very nice.
I heard it's hard to locate. Like not a lot of people know where it is, how to find it.
Oh yeah,
it's a different name.
What is it? A park now?
I don't know. Would you say this is the creepiest looking serial killer we've ever done? This guy is up there. Frankenstein looking motherfucker with straight up like Chihuahua bulging eyes, dead lifeless eyes. Like this guy strangling you is a horrific image.
Yeah.
I'm going to see it in my nightmares. This guy he looks like he has no soul when you look at his picture. Granted, like a lot of those old pictures, they don't add a lot of character to you.
Right.
But God, from what we can see, these pictures, I mean, we'll post a promotional picture for this episode on Instagram and stuff, and you'll get to see what a...
Yeah, let's use the bug-eyed one.
Fuck.
That's a good one.
What a creep. Everyone's a bug-eyed one. What are you talking about? This guy had bug eyes.
I mean, like the one where he's like trying to make
is.
his eyes really open. Look at this place right here.
Oh, yeah.
This
very
is
eerie.
older
10 Rillington
photo of
Place
10
was an
Rillington Place,
eerie, creepy place. He was like the very end one against the wall, too, the brick wall.
All the way against the wall on the bottom.
Creepy.
Yeah. It's like a tinted blue.
A house of horrors, if you will. How many House of Horrors have we done in this fucking podcast? Many.
Cromwell Street, Fred and Rose.
Cromwell.
It looks kind of a lot like theirs. Same type of housing, I think, except for Fred and Rose had a townhome, right? So they actually had upstairs, downstairs.
Dude, we've done so many House of Horrors.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying.
So many. Kansas City, we've done a few of those just in that city.
The Benders cabin.
The Benders. What's his name? Bob Berdella.
Bob Berdella's house.
This place is a House of Horrors for sure. He had the
God,
fucking
yes.
butcher place down in the basement with the drain where you drain the blood.
Gacy's house. Jesus.
Gacy's house. Gacy's apartment. Yeah.
Yeah. No, Gacy's house.
Oh no, I was thinking
house.
Dahmer's apartment.
Dahmer's
Gacy's.
apartment, yeah.
Oh God, Gacy's crawl
house.
space.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Had what 20-something bodies down there?
Yeah, and then
unreal,
who was the other one we did in wartime Europe? Dr. Satan, Marcel Patois.
Oh yeah.
His triangular room with the chain hooks.
God.
Ugh.
Yeah, the torture chamber, pretty much.
Yep.
Experimentation chamber.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy was creep. He was like a Jew that was sympathizing with the Nazis.
Yeah.
Most of you probably heard it. If not, check that story out. That was interesting.
All right. Well, another one in the books.
That's right. This was a fun one to talk about, though. There's a lot of psychological discussion here. Like, there's a lot of what caused this and a lot of why did he do this.
We didn't think who gave us this suggestion. Jesus, one of our biggest fans.
Well, we can do it right now. The show's not over.
Go for it.
Chris Sharp. Sir Chris Sharp. Thank you so much, dude.
Yeah, dude, honestly, one of the biggest supporters we have. The dude's always just tweeting, blowing up Twitter.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, man. It really makes it worth it to hear from listeners like that really invest in your show and they believe in it, you know?
Yeah.
It keeps us going. It really does.
Yeah.
It helps.
And it didn't hurt that it was a great suggestion anyway.
Super good suggestion, yeah.
Yeah. So thanks, Chris Sharp. And let's do some shout outs and some sponsors and get out of here.
All right.
Number one in our hearts and in our pits. Oh my Gaia.
Oh my Gaia. Nice opening. Yeah, Oh My Gaia is an innovative all-natural deodorant, fragrance, and beard oil company specializing in paraben and aluminum-free products. Their innovative line of deodorants inhibit the growth of odor-causing bacteria while maintaining effectiveness. At Oh My Gaia, they use only all-natural, paraben, and aluminum-free organic ingredients.
You know, you can say all that mumbo-jumbo, but it's just badass, great-smelling, fucking
it's
hardworking, all-natural deodorant.
Not staining your clothes deodorant.
Right. I actually take the little bit of residue left on my fingers after I put it in my pits and I rub it on my shirt because it smells so good.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you want to smell it a little bit, you know? Because you kind of get used to if you wear the same smell. So I got two smells. I got Egyptian musk and fireside. I like to alternate between the two so I don't get too used to them.
I think I got some fireside coming my way. I'm excited.
You're going to like it.
Yep.
You're going to like it.
But, you know, we have our own fucking scent.
Oh, yeah.
So you can always get True Crime Pine with our logo on it.
That's the shit.
And it smells fucking amazing. It's one of my absolute favorites as well.
It does. And if you want to order any of these scents, guys, make sure you use our code CRIMEGUYS. One word, CRIMEGUYS, CRIMEGUYS, if you don't know the spell. Crime Guys for 15% off.
She also has awesome beard oil and the samples. You want to talk about that?
And scented oils. Yes, guys, look, most of these scents are straightforward, like vanilla, cherry almond, sandalwood, lavender, lemongrass, like coconut. Like these are all pretty straightforward scents. If there's a scent that you know you'll like, I suggest you order that one. Order that one, and then you can ask for maybe like a sample of something like that. She would be, you know, more than willing to send you, like say if you order coconut and you're like, oh, I'd really like to smell dreamsicle, you know, just put that in your order.
She's not sending samples unless you order something.
Right. I mean, nobody can.
Which is absolutely
nobody can. Nobody can afford to do that.
No one's going to send you free shit
for no reason. Right. And you know, Wendy is a great person. She's running a great business. She's got a great product, and you know, she can't afford to be doing that. I don't know who can. Like, just be sending out free stuff everywhere.
When we send stickers out, you send us a few bucks and we'll send you some stickers, is what we say. We don't just say, send us your address and we'll send you stickers. We go broke.
Right. We go broke, exactly. Especially all you UK wankas out there.
Right.
3 stamps for that bitch.
Right. Fuck. We're getting new books of stamps every day. No, we'll send anybody stickers. We love you all, no matter where you are.
Absolutely.
Which, we should talk about some iTunes reviews. You wanted Mr. International over there is going to read the reviews that we've gotten from other countries.
Yes,
to start. Thank you guys for that.
I feel like we've neglected Canada a little bit, so I went back a little ways. If I don't get it, then hit me up and I will get you. But we want to thank Leroy Luna from Dark Topic. We know that guy.
Siri.
Jen V, Gutsy Woman, B Wag, Blue Canadian Fan, Seriously Pretty Fish, and Blake No Last Name. Thank you guys, you Canadians up there. Thank you so much for your 5-star reviews and your support. We got a couple new ones from Australia.
All right. Down under.
S. Piers and Cate. Thank you very much for those 2 5-star reviews. And then a new one from the UK, AC Harris 1977.
I love.
Thank you guys so much for reviewing. Like, aside from Patreon, that's what pushes the podcast forward. That's what, you know what I mean? That's what gets you noticed.
And we love sitting on the crapper and reading them. It's great.
Yeah, why not?
It's my favorite pastime.
Good toilet reading.
So in the U.S., I want to thank Crime Creeper 1976.
Oh, good name.
F. Valid. D. Sativa 99. We don't know that guy. Sarah Jarito. Ginelben.
All those, you nailed it.
Punstoppable. Just 2662 and Kimberly 0614. Thank you all for your iTunes reviews. Our American,
like we said,
American listeners.
Yeah, if you like the show and you want to support the show, but you don't want to do Patreon or can't afford it, whatever, no big deal. Go leave us a 5-star review. Just click 5 stars. Like, it helps the show a lot, guys.
That absolutely works too. I want to thank the sticker donors since the last episode we did. I want to thank, let's see, Alexandra in Australia.
Oh, cool.
And Alley Cat in Middletown, Virginia.
Oh, very nice.
And TRSC Strikers in South Sioux City, New England?
Nice.
Nebraska. Sorry.
What stickers are you sending out nowadays? All of them?
Yeah, a little bit of everything. Whatever I got.
I've seen we've got some requests for the new ones.
We got the new Orbit
People are
ones.
getting the far out ones.
Yeah. Far out,
The
man.
Galaxy ones.
The Galaxy True Crime Guy stickers are selling like hotcakes.
Yeah, those are cool.
Do we have one more? Yeah, Mindy in Florida, Tampa, Florida. What's up, Mindy?
Awesome. Thank you, guys. We really appreciate those donations.
Absolutely.
What else? Patreon.
Patreon.com/truecrimeguys.
Right.
15 premium episodes.
Yep.
You name it, we've done it.
Some outtakes, some
Let's
conversations with listeners.
Let's rail off some other ones. John Wayne Gacy. We've done West Memphis 3. We've done Jeffrey Dahmer. We've done
Fred and Rose West.
Fred and Rose West. We've done
Jim Jones.
Jim Jones. That's my favorite one ever. It's my favorite one ever. It's because my favorite case ever.
Yeah.
It gives me that gooey true crime feeling more than any other. The death tape to me is, I have to listen to it like once every 6 months at least, just to get reminded of how dark the human fucking
and how
psyche
scary,
can get.
Yeah, how scary a group mentality, gang mentality can be. Right.
The death tapes, man, that's like the ultimate true crime thing for me.
Absolutely.
But Jim Jones is.
Yeah.
Damn, that was an interesting case to study.
Absolutely. Jody Arias.
He just
just did.
We did.
Had a lot of fun with that one.
Yeah. We did Ruby Ridge.
Ruby Ridge.
Stanley Tookie Williams. We did.
Now that one was fun. That was like a little.
That was
bit
a
out
good
of our
different.
norm. We need to do something like that soon. We need to do somebody out of the ordinary.
Right.
We looked up.
We have a a good one coming up for the next Patreon. We have a good idea.
Yeah,
it's a different one. It's a different one. It's another
that's true.
damn British one.
Yeah. I think our accents are getting better though.
They are.
Maybe just a teeny tiny bit.
They would probably disagree.
Yeah, probably.
We also have some bonus recordings and some like Photoshop stuff on there. We have we've had conversations with creepers that are patrons, and there's all
monthly
kinds
giveaway. Monthly giveaway.
The
Don't forget
monthly
about that.
giveaway. Yep, we let you pick something from our store. If you're a Patreon, your name goes into the drawing, and whoever gets picked gets to pick something from the store. Once a month, we do that.
That's right.
So
around the first of every month.
For $2 a month, you get everything we just mentioned, and you get your name in the hat.
So like,
for the
if
win.
you win one hoodie, that's like 20 months.
Right.
Hoodies are like $40.
Yeah.
Like you just got
Well
all
worth
your money back plus more.
And you got all those episodes.
Yeah.
And so yeah,
absolutely.
It's a good time over there.
It is. We have fun on Patreon. We put in a little extra work. The episodes are a little longer.
Oh, dude, we have
They're like-
several 3-hour ones.
Yeah, they're like 2 to 3 hours typically.
Yeah.
But they're bigger cases.
Michael's intros
involved.
get even more over the top, if you can believe that. Dude, the freaking Jonestown intro is my favorite, and it was unreal.
Oh yeah.
So good, but so was the
Cool.
all of them were fantastic.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, Michael.
Appreciate it.
You know,
I can't wait to do this one.
our Twitter feed is filled with that intro is fire, bro. It's just nonstop Michael intro stuff. Forget the host, guys.
Yeah, forget the guy. Forget the foundation
I
of the
don't hardly
podcast over here.
I can't say shit. I don't even do the crime lines anymore. I'm just here.
Nah,
guys.
man, dude. Without you, it wouldn't be the same, man. You can't create this chemistry out of thin air. You just can't do it, people.
No. All right, guys. Keep creeping. We love you. We're tired of blabbering.
Yeah, keep creeping, guys.
See you next time.
True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder, get murder. True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder charming.